I needed something to break the cycle and to take control of my life again, to not let this dictate or drive or control how my life is going to be. And so in August, the exact date, that's the certificate on the background. It's July 30th. So on July 30th, that certificate is from the national park there in Tanzania. But I summited Mount Kilimanjaro with a group of disabled veterans, and that was a real big turning point for me to say, like, all right, I'm back in control of my life, and I'm going to live my life, and we're going to see where this takes us.
Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. I'm your host, Aaron Hale, and this is Point of Impact. We've got incredible guests for you today. Master Chief Petty Officer Steve Flemming. He's a hospital corpsman, worked with the Marines, and he's got just an amazing story. Talk about resilience, and fortitude, and drive and determination. I won't give any of it away because I tell you what, it's pretty amazing. Talk about the Chumbawamba philosophy. I get knocked down and I get up again. So, anyways, without further ado, Steve Flemming.
Hey, I'm really happy to be here. Appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to our conversation, and excited to see where we go.
Well, welcome to Point of Impact. And I'll tell you what, first, you joined the Navy, became a corpsman, and you went like the FMF route, right? The Marine.
Yeah, I enlisted back in 2005, and I was like anything. If you were a male, and you were willing or tested and qualified to be a corpsman, back then with the global war on terror really ramping up and everything else, like FMF is where you were going. And like most people that join, you don't really know what you're getting into. And I originally wanted to do welding. And being from Houston, Texas, I thought like CVs, and if I learned how to weld, if I decided to get out like oil and gas, like I could probably make a pretty good living welding in Houston for oil and gas industry. And they were like, but if you do this FMF corpsman, we'll give you $5,000. And I thought, ooh, well, that's going to change my life. And it turns out that was paid in installments over my first contract before taxes. It didn't really change much.
Well, $5,000. That's it's a heck of a bonus.
It's the only bonus I ever got.
I think they were offering, when I came in 99, they were offering the Navy College Fund, and I still haven't figured out how to tap into that thing.
Oh yeah.
But it was like you get the GI Bill and Navy College Fund, so you have a buku dinero, but none in your pocket. No more.
Kicker on the side.
Why the Navy? Why not just Marines?
I don't really have a good answer for that. I've been asked that before, and it was just I originally thought I was going to join the Army, and I say that based on in high school, the recruiters would come and go all the time, but we had a really persistent Army recruiter, and he was there. At all the major events. He went to the graduations. He went to sporting events. He was a true professional in what he did. He would work to establish connections with the youth and would go to all their things. And I remembered that, right? And he had established a connection. And so when the time came, I went and did 1 year. I graduated 2004. And I decided I was going to do 1 year at community college and kind of see if that was, do I want to join now or try this college thing? And after about halfway through, a little more than a year into my college, I knew I still wanted to join. and all the recruiters are in one space, and the Navy were the only ones in the office. And I'd gone in there and just said I was looking for that recruiter, and they weren't there. And the Navy was like, "Oh, well, just come talk to us." And you're like, "If anything, you can come take the ASVAB, and the ASVAB's the same for all the branches. And if you decide you don't want to join the Navy, I didn't know that that was a technique, and they're in the process of recruiting me." I was like, "Oh, that's very helpful." Anyways, ultimately ended up joining the Navy simply because they were there and we had a conversation, and they sold it to me. And $5,000 when you're 18, 19 sounds like everything. So
It's
here we are.
join the Navy. It's just like the Army, except all our bases are near beaches.
Yeah. Yep. And I never really experienced the real Navy. Spent virtually my entire career with the Marine Corps, and I'd never been on a ship or anything.
How many years did you make it?
Just under 19 before I was medically retired.
Mm-hmm.
Just shy of 19.
It was similar in aspect when I joined the Navy first, and 8 years later, I guess jumped ship. I wanted to strike to a different rate, and they said no. So I'm like, all right, I'll go do EOD in another branch, and I wanted to go Marines. But the guys, it looked like they were looking down their nose at me. They literally didn't even act like recruiters. So I said, all right, forget it. I'll take my, service record and, over to the Army recruiter. And it's like, we could use you. Sure.
Yep.
It was around 2007, 08.
Yep. Surge of Afghanistan coming out of the bulk of Iraq and everything. And I mean, it's all just timing, right? And what the branches need. And so it's interesting how things work out. And some, obviously, I'm not unhappy with. I made Master Chief. I've had a successful career. It's just funny how things kind of come together.
I want to talk about the. I want to talk about the medical side of it, not just your experience as the first responder medical professional, but your experiences on the table. But I do have just a side question about I do have plenty of experience. 8 years in the Navy. I made it to second petty officer, second class, and I do notice that once you make chief, you put those khakis on or whatever. I don't even know what they went kind of through this weird OCD uniform thing for the last few years. But what did pull? Did you have to go do those career rounding duties? Like, did they pull you from Marine Battalion to put you in like the division head or the division chief for OBGYN at the Naples Hospital or something like that?
No, I never worked at the hospital. Never worked on a ship. So I went and I started in the infantry, and I did as a brand new junior corpsman, and did 6 years I did 3 years of infantry work. And I screened and interviewed and everything to go work at the Marine Reconnaissance Battalion, where I spent 6 years and really did a lot of growing up and deployed out of there in Afghanistan and some other stuff. And then I made chief while it was kind of around that 6th year mark at Recon, and I went back to the infantry to be a battalion chief. And so I was running all the corpsmen. Infantry battalion has about 42 corpsmen, and maybe between 600 and 800 Marines coming and going. And so that's where I kind of cut my teeth as a new chief. Left there, and I made senior chief coming out of battalion chief duty. And I went to Navy Medicine Education Training Command. And so I was running education training programs for all across the Navy medicine community, and we had like mobile teams that would travel and teach tactical medicine or card classes, and, CPR and things for nurses and physicians and things as well. And then went from there, did a stint in Korea during COVID, went over to Korea, did some work, and I made Master Chief coming out of Korea, where my last duty station was Marine Corps Forces Central Command. And I was working for a 2-star general at the time, and we were responsible for all Marine Corps operations across the Middle East. And that was where ultimately I got medically retired. But I was bouncing around the Middle East for some time, for pretty much all the time during my tenure there. And on paper, I would say I was assigned to Tampa, but my work kept me overseas for most of that.
Gotcha. Well, at least when I was stationed in Naples, I dated a corpsman. It was interesting to see the variety of experiences at the hospital. But tell me about, when was it that you got that first case of bad news?
I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in January of 2018, and I woke up. I want to say Christmas Eve, and I had bilateral tingling and numbness in my thumbs, and I thought I had pinched a nerve in my back. And so I was spent all day doing stretching and trying to like figure out what I had done, because I know that I had done some things earlier that might have tweaked my back, and so I thought this was a symptom of it. And as it started to spread across my hands and spread up my arms and into my torso, um, and it continued through Christmas and things, we went to the ER, and that led to a neurology and so on. And so by January, all the tests, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and that was hard and scary at the time. And ultimately, I fought. I went through a med board, and I fought and got cleared to stay in the service. And uh, and so that was kind of the first. That was the first thing that I thought, oh man, it's not just going to end my career; it's going to change my life. I made all these positive changes to my lifestyle and things, like hoping to stay vertical. Right, MS is a very um, unpredictable disease process, and so it can be really scary. And so that was the first bit of bad news, and I was blessed to be cleared to stay in and continue serving. Um, Shortly after getting diagnosed, about 6 months later, I had to fight and prove that I could still do my job.
How did it go from this pinched nerve to finding out about the MS? Was it something that showed up in an X-ray? Did
They do
some blood tests?
MRIs. Yeah, they do MRIs. They scan your brain and everything. So they'd X-rayed and CT'd everything. I didn't have a pinched nerve, and CTs aren't enough to diagnose MS, but what they need is a brain MRI, and they're looking for lesions. And I had multiple active lesions across my brain and in my C-spine. And they give you a high dose of prednisone to knock those out. And then I essentially get MRIs of my brain and spine every year, to monitor and manage. And I see a neurologist every year to manage and monitor um, the disease process.
Now, I had an aunt. What was that? I had an aunt who died from MS, and she was the athletic one in the family. I never knew that. I never saw that because by the time I was old enough to recognize it, I'd always known her as the aunt with the uh, crutches, and then it was the next time came around, it was the aunt in the wheelchair, and then it was the aunt in that was always in the lazy boy. It was just, and I know it comes in waves, multiple sclerosis. Have you experienced one of these waves yet?
No, I have had symptoms. I'm very fortunate to still be mobile. Fatigue and stuff is my big thing. Um, uh, Spasms, nerve pain. Those are realities that I face. But there's different levels or escalations within the multiple sclerosis diagnosis. And so you have like relapsing remitting, which is what I have. Then you have secondary progressive and primary progressive. And so part of that neurology team and everything monitoring your stuff helps you know as you're verging or entering these like escalation points within your diagnosis, and those will have significant milestones in mobility or bodily function impacts, if you would. And so, like, I've been very fortunate. I really monitor my stuff. I manage it. I take my medicines when I'm supposed to. I try to avoid things that I should avoid. I try to balance this beast as best I can. And then when we'll talk about it in a bit, I'm sure, when I got the second bit of bad news, that obviously plays a factor in stuff as well, and in some ways takes priority. But trying to juggle these things in your health and in your wellness, I think, is a challenge for most people. You're just trying to live your life at the same time.
Are there ways to forestall these attacks? Is health a concern when it comes to like the proper living diet, exercise, all that kind of stuff? Does that play any part in the progress of this disease?
It can, yes. You look at trying. I was immediately started researching like anti-inflammatory diets. So you start looking at inflammation for multiple sclerosis is damage. So you already know that you've got an inflammatory process happening in your body. So you look at things that will bring additional inflammation to your system, and you start trying to figure out like what can I remove factor wise, food wise, diet purposes and things. What can I do to remove those components so that I'm not adding inflammation, and the goal being the only inflammation in your body is the natural inflammation or inflammatory processes that exist because of the disease itself, or what have you. So you kind of look at that and try to make those smart decisions and where you can.
What sort of things did you go through after you learned of the diagnosis? What kind of emotions? How did you react?
Um, it was hard, you get pretty upset. You start going through, you go through your rabbit hole of your emotional process, and that was kind of the first time I'd learned, like, or not learned, but really experienced the idea that like this is um, it's not only affects me, and working with my wife and my kids and stuff to like understand and they have their own processes. Like my wife particularly has her own process, right, for like going through her emotional stuff, and to cope with or adjust to the idea. But I think um, for me, I'd learned through my service and everything and problem solving. By that point, I had a couple stints overseas, a lot of, some combat experience and things. And so You look at identify the problem, you know, work the solutions, you know, figure out how to get over the obstacle and start, you know, start navigating and working your problems. And so like that's how I kind of approached it. And I can say that that's really good for guys like us that, you know, we've honed in on a combat mindset. You identify a problem, you work the problem, identify the best COAs and work solutions, and you start going through your process. However, that's not always the best course of action when you have loved ones that's not their mindset. That's not how they process and things, and like they need you to like go through certain loopholes with them. And so like I learned a little bit about that and trying to be a good partner and everything, and trying to like, okay, like this is something that obviously affects more than just me, and it's not just about problem solving and working it, but I need to be able to navigate this with somebody else who is not going to crunch the information from a data standpoint, but rather she's going to want to emotionally process this. And so that was a big learning curve and growth point for me.
I know that warrior mentality. Sometimes we pick something more immediate or more tangible to busy ourselves with, deploy rather than deal with marital issues. Um, I don't know, start a chocolate business versus have to deal with the emotional turmoil of being blind and deaf. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Um, but it is something we tend to, I don't know. It's like tough, that masculinity. Let me go fix something so I don't have to feel the feelings. I'll get to that later when there's time. So you you had to deal with that. You also were dealing with a Navy that wanted to separate you.
Yeah, they wanted to look at it. They convened a board. I got med boarded, and then they ultimately cleared me to stay in.
Yeah, I also same thing. I, of course, going blind. I went through the med board process, but instead of clearing me, I told him I wanted to request a co-ad continuation of active duty service and just stay on as a blind person because I was aware of a handful of other blind soldiers that stayed on active duty, and it was for me that was denial. I needed to prove to myself that I was still capable. And but by the time the med board process was over, I didn't have anything left to prove, so I retired. But so dealing with the MS, stayed on active duty, and what was life like after that? And
That was when I was going to Education Training Command, so that was kind of a nice break. I didn't have to deal with the operational stuff anymore. Um, rolled into running education training teams and developing instructors and education processes. And um, so by the time it was time to go to Korea and stuff, I was pretty well versed in my own my own stuff, my own practice or processes.
so okay, so the med board process was over. You went back to work, and everything was peaches and cream after that. When did the next diagnosis happen?
So I'm at Marcent, and I am bouncing around the Middle East and doing these work trips. And December of 22, I went for my annual scans for MS, and I'm in Tampa, and I go do my scans, and they tell me, hey, we see at the very top of your liver a glimpse of something, and it might be a liver lesion, but it's probably fat, and the fat comes and goes from your liver. And I said, okay. They're like, just book a ultrasound, just for due diligence, and you'll know, and it'll be easy, no problem. Cool. I knew they called me and like gave me my MRI results when I was on leave and with my family for the holidays. So I knew that I'd set up my ultrasound for January, and I knew that the first week I got back, I had a work trip to UAE. So I got back to the office, literally packed my stuff, boom, went to UAE for the week, had some meetings, and then turned around and came back. So I set up my ultrasound for that Friday that I knew I was going to be getting off a plane that morning. So I land back in Tampa at 7:30, go home, clean up, get in uniform, run up to the clinic, and my plan was do my medical appointment, go home, and I was gonna go to bed and reverse cycle through because it was like a 96 or something, or 72 or 96, I can't remember, but we had a long weekend. So my plan was do that, go home, reverse cycle through the weekend, and be fresh for work next week. And the ultrasound tech, she's doing her thing, and she's taking a lot longer than I expected. I thought maybe she's just new. She was a very low rank, and so, all right, she's new. I'm not, I'm a master chief. Like, I'm not going to hassle her, like, let her go through. She's learning. It is what it is. And I just don't say anything, and I leave, and I'm not even off the base yet. I get a call telling me to come back to the clinic and report to CT. Well, like, that's kind of weird. Go back, and then they tell me I can't leave until I see the CENTCOM surgeon, and that's when I knew something was wrong. And anyways, it resulted in him, the physician, coming in and letting me know that they had found a very, very large tumor, that they believe it's cancerous in nature, and they wanted to start immediate processes to get me sent somewhere to a specialty center for evaluation. And that was, I'm exhausted. I'm on UAE time. I'm really, just trying to process all this because it was supposed to just be a simple, boom, it's a piece of fat or something, and leave. So that weekend was a very long weekend for me, and I ended up going to the beach, and I zoned out, and I walked. I just walked in the sand, in the water, um, for a long time, and I ended up covering about like between 6 and 8 miles, and I kind of snapped to in this like raw stretch of beach where there was just nobody and nothing around, and I had to just turn around and start walking back towards civilization, if you would. And then, um, yeah, it was a lot. I'd talk to my wife, I'd talk to my mentors, best friends and things, and was just trying to process that. And it was a long weekend, and so over the course of that, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, okay, got it. We're going to do surgery. We're going to mop it up with chemo. I'm going to do some physical therapy, and I'm going to get back to work. I ultimately got transferred to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. Now, this is where I'm from. That's where I'm at now, outside of Houston. But the MD Anderson did their specialty evaluations and things, and they ultimately came back and said I had stage 4 pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer, and that it had already spread throughout my liver, and that the primary tumor had consumed my pancreas, and that it was inoperable. That was the other thing. And so that was the real, oof, that's not my plan. That's not, no, it's not what I worked out on my walk, guys. Yeah, I had a plan. You guys cut it out, mop it up with the chemo, physical therapy. I go back to work. And they're like, no, not this time. So ultimately, the Navy retired me.
What's that saying? If you want to give God a good belly laugh, tell him your plan.
Yeah.
Uh, what the the Navy didn't want to deal with.
Oh no, no. Yeah, that was a pretty easy. That was a pretty easy. The Navy's done. Let me be very clear for anybody listening. Navy was fantastic and took care of me, and I'm retired, and my retirement benefits and stuff are taking care of my stuff. So the Navy took care of me, but the Navy, any military branch, any military service, and I think it's everybody that's retired, I think knows this now. Those that are still in, like that have a true passion for it, they don't fully understand it yet. But eventually, the service, whatever branch you're in, it's either you're going to be done with them or they will be done with you. But no matter what, like it's happening, right? And so I was obviously not done with the Navy. I loved my job. I loved what I did. I loved being a leader of service members and having real impacts on big programs and things and working at a high level. But ultimately, if you're not done with it, eventually it will be done with you. And so in this case, the Navy was done with me, and it was a little bit of a challenge to accept that at first. But ultimately, I can say that I'm in a really good space about it. I'm grateful and I'm very blessed to have had the experiences and opportunities that I had, and the people, and the relationships, and all of that that came with it. But it was, yeah, that was just one too many things for the Navy to collect on my behalf. So they ultimately ran the process and found me unfit for service, recommended full retirement.
You know, I think maybe one of the worst parts of all that is going through the med board twice. Oh man, this again. But did I read correctly that this was at least in part service connected?
Yep, yeah, it's part of the PACT Act, which is the legislation about um, uh, burn pits and toxic exposure events and the cancers and things attributed to it. My cancer is specifically listed in the PACT Act. It is service connected. Um, of my 2011 deployment, there are 10 of us. I believe it's 10. I think that's the latest number that have uh, different forms, but there's 10 of us that were all at the same place at the same time in our team with cancer. And additionally, there's 3 of us with MS, and I'm the only one with both. But but yeah, so it's being around burn pits, being around IED labs, and bomb materials and things, as I'm sure you're well versed in, professionally speaking. Around you think about the toxic chemicals that go into IEDs and things. The it's a unique. It's like working in a narco lab. They don't they're using these various chemicals and things to make a lot of toxic materials and make them combustible. The burn pits and all the things that we're burning and doing to ourselves essentially in country. Um, these have lasting effects that unfortunately we're now seeing the real degree of impact in service members and veterans.
What do you do? after that kind of news? I mean, what? I mean, you're Comer, so of course it was take some Motrin and change your socks, and here's an Israeli bandage, right?
So getting cancer was a real gut punch, and getting the news again. So you find out January, I come up with my own plan without consulting a single physician, right? I've come up with this is my plan. Easy, got it. Like, well, physical therapy, whatever. All right, cool. Um, then by March, they tell me it's inoperable. It's worse than you thought, and all that. That was like, I mean, really, you're talking another very serious gut punch. And on top of that, I see the effects now. What this is having on my wife, and she's having her emotional response to this. But you really you start calling your circles of friends in your based on proximity or whatever, however you look at it, and start having these conversations, and you go down some dark rabbit holes. I ultimately got, I was in this pretty grungy place for me. I'm not generally a negative person. Like, I can usually like be pretty practical and reasonable, and like, you work the problem. Like, okay, so we got a plan. Like, this is gonna suck, but like, we got a plan. So like, we're just gonna have to gut through it, and like, that's just what it is, and we're gonna move on. And like, I can accept that kind of stuff. Um, and I was just really kind of stuck in this rut, and I call this retired sergeant major, and I'm telling him about my stuff, and he's a CEO of a nonprofit that he runs for veterans and first responders, and he said, we're talking through it, and he's like, dude, it's fate. He's like, I had one guy drop out, and I want to offer you a fully funded seat to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, this is April of 2023. I got cancer was found in January. I get told in March it's inoperable, and exactly what kind of cancer it is after biopsies and scans and all sorts of stuff. And so I'm like, by April, I'm pretty torn up and just really upset. And I'm like, did you not hear me? Like, did you not hear what I told you? And he's like, no, I heard you. But I'm telling you, in July, we're going to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with 10 disabled veterans. And if you want the last fully funded seat, it's yours. So I hung up, and I thought about it, and I talked to my wife about it, and we kind of talked about it, and ultimately I said yes. And what that symbolized and what that has become, and everything since, was I needed something to break the cycle, and to take control of my life again, to not let this dictate or drive or control how my life is going to be. And so in August, the exact date, that's the certificate on the background. It's July 30th. So on July 30th, that certificate is from the national park there in Tanzania. But I summited Mount Kilimanjaro with a group of disabled veterans, and that was a real big turning point for me to say, like, all right, I'm back in control of my life, and I'm going to live my life, and we're going to see where this takes us.
After these messages, we'll be right back. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this episode, Extraordinary Delights, UODFudge.com. Extraordinary Delights is a disabled veteran, family-owned small business making handcrafted fudge and other sweet treats for the chocolate-loving patriots just like you. Go to UODFudge.com and check out some of our delicious flavors like triple threat chocolate with or without walnuts, mint dark chocolate, strawberry and creamy white chocolate, or my personal favorite, American Pick-Me-Up, an all-American version of tiramisu. While you're there, go to the apparel store and check out our awesome t-shirts, polos, and the baddest tactical apron on the market. You see me wear on the TikTok show, Aaron Hale's Cook Without Looking. So, right now, go over to eodfudge.com and pick out some fudge, other sweet treats for that patriot in your life with a sweet tooth. That's eodfudge.com. eodfudge.com. And now, back to the show. You know, that I was 2 weeks away from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro when the bacterial meningitis hit me. So my illness prevented me from going to Kilimanjaro. And of course, I'm sitting in the hospital and come home, and I'm thinking, God, like 2 times. You know, I get blown up once. I hit the meningitis 4 years later, and it's like, when have I paid my dues? Right? When does one guy had his fair share? Right? When did the next guy get this one? Plus, can I get my tickets back? But that's an incredible experience. Hit the top of Africa, and then you said it was a turning point. So, where did it go from here?
So from there, I've since then I was still in like the Wounded Warrior program in the service. So like I'm still active duty, and I I joined the Team Navy for the Warrior Games. Started going to training camps and learning adaptive sports. I started meeting other wounded warriors, other service members that were sick or injured, and going through their med board process. I ultimately competed in the June 2024 Warrior Games. I got a silver medal in standing rifle. Competed in 5 other sports while I was there. I got to meet from every branch, incredible athletes and service members, just overcoming all their own things, right? It's all relative, whether they're an amputation, whether they have cancer, whether they've got some sort of significant trauma event that has affected them. Whatever it is, these individuals are all overcoming their relative struggles, and they're finding their drive, their purpose, they're rekindling that competitive spirit within them. And that was just absolutely inspiring. And then coming out of the Warrior Games, I was very blessed to get picked up to represent the United States on Team United States for the Invictus Games. So this past February, I was retired July of 25, 30 days after the Warrior Games. I was retired, but I was selected prior to my retirement, so I was still able to go. But myself around and with about 50 other athletes from across all the branches at Warrior Games, they picked 50. We went to Canada and we competed in the Invictus Games, and what that's essentially the international Wounded Warrior Games. And man, what I met people from about 23 other countries and service members, all again overcoming their relative struggles and challenges, and watching them compete in these adaptive sports events, and just an absolute honor to represent the United States, and an absolute pleasure in meeting so many incredible warriors from all walks of life and all corners of the world. That was really, really special. And so I kind of take those kinds of experiences, and I share them, whether it be on a podcast like this, or I share them with other groups and nonprofits and things. But it's definitely something that I'll never forget. It's definitely something that's shaped how I view or think of things, and I try to just kind of apply what I've learned from those relationships and experiences into my new walks. I've got new challenges with my health that I'm currently facing, and so those experiences and the inspirations that came with the individuals associated with all of those definitely come in handy as I walk through these next steps or chapters in my health journey.
I think, what was it, just early this year or late last year, they changed some of the rules for the Warrior Games and the Invictus Games, where you it can't be for any retirees, or you can have been separated for too long.
So it's right now. I believe the rule is you have to be within 1 year of separation or retirement, which there is a lot of controversy around. There's a lot of people that were upset by that. I'm not personally upset by that, and I say that based on the the idea shouldn't be the idea, in my opinion, and I think it's probably more than my opinion. I think it's kind of goes back to what the original point of the stuff was. But in my opinion, I see it as like this particular program should be kind of opening your mind to these new challenges, and opening up the idea that these sports, these events, these types of functions and things, and the abilities that you possess are still inside you, and that the idea should be you can go out and there's other clubs, other events, there's nonprofits putting on things. So I think doing that allows for that next generation of service member and stuff. It really puts that focus on those that haven't discovered that yet. They haven't discovered that about themselves. They haven't discovered those doors. I know that there are some individuals that are a little upset because they're like, oh, well, now I can't go back a second time because I'm 15 months over, and they really enjoyed it. But I think I'm not personally upset by it. I kind of see it as making sure that we're getting the people that haven't discovered themselves for themselves, their abilities, and rekindling that competitive fire in them so that they can go out into their new reality, their new world, and find whatever competitive thing they want to do after learning about themselves within that program, if that makes sense.
Well, I know that athletics, mountain climbing, adaptive kayaking, running in particular, have all been extremely therapeutic for me. Ever since my injury, my illness, I needed that outlet. Not to mention the health, the physical health aspect, not just the mental health aspect. But maybe because it is a DoD program, so active duty, and within 1 year of separation, I guess it makes sense. But are you familiar with?
If they open it up again, great. But I'm not personally upset by it. I think there's so many opportunities out there for our community to plug into, and I think that from where we were to where we are now, I think is night and day difference, and I think that's fantastic, and I think we should be looking at taking advantages of those additional opportunities.
Are you familiar with my friend Brian Big Country Conwell? He is starting. After learning that news, he's starting his own games, and he's getting a lot of support. He's getting so maybe we'll have to put you in contact. Maybe
Okay.
to be one of the athletes in a whole new competition, and it's specifically open ended just for that reason. So he wants me to participate, but a staring contest is not one of the events. So me and Chuck Norris are the only two that can win a staring contest with the sun. But anyways, I know you've mentioned uh, PTSD. In fact, there's I've talked about this with a couple other guests in the past. Is this I don't know, debate versus between PTS and PTSD. And for me, I think I don't know, it's for me, it's about words, not stigma. I don't care what anybody else uh, thinks about me, my abilities, my disabilities. I don't care. And I don't care about stigma. You can believe whatever you want, but words, definitions. I think we're past the last 10, 15, 20 years of trying to change terms to make it sound nicer, feel better. I think especially with you being in the medical field, you would want a correct definition. So what are your thoughts on post-traumatic stress versus post-traumatic stress disorder? And I hope I didn't taint the waters there.
That's a really good question. So I used to think about that in terms of not liking disorder and liking just the idea of PTS. I I don't necessarily think of it as a disorder, and I went through a PTSD program called Warrior Path and everything, and like the big thing for them was talking about like post traumatic growth, and that really kind of changed some of the lens that you look at it, and how okay, like PTSD, like I don't really care. Like what I think is the biggest importance is about removing the cultural stigma. And I think for the most part we have, right? 15 years ago, we had employers worried, oh well, I don't know if I can hire this guy. I mean, he's got PTSD. What if he snaps on everybody in the office or something, right? And it was just an uneducated, uninformed idea of what PTSD is, and they think like, oh, you've been in combat and you did time in Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff, so like you're just gonna revert to like violence at any moment. But I think culturally, society is kind of separated that negative connotation and stigma with PTSD. Um, I think it's safe to say that I don't hear that kind of talk or anything anymore anyway. But I like to always mention or bring up the idea of like the post traumatic growth, and that like nothing ever has grown without discomfort in some pain points. And so like I think the disorder stamp kind of piece really sticks when you're not growing. And so that's kind of how when I have these conversations with individuals and stuff, and I'm like, that's really the main point is like, if you feel like you're progressing in life and you're not sitting on the couch and you're not just drinking yourself silly and you're not just pouting about woe is me and you're just stuck in this thing, you're going to school or you're going to work or you're doing the activities, you're doing something, you're doing a hobby, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, like, are you working towards something? Do you have goals that you're trying to obtain? Are you working to better yourself? Are you working to mend relationships or whatever it is? And, and after going through that Warrior Path program, that was something that kind of changed how I talk about it with people when they want to have a discussion around it, or if they're, if one of my buddies is kind of in a rut and wants to kind of vent or talk through something. That's always my kind of thing, is like, it's not going to get better overnight, but like what you need to be honest and ask yourself is like, are you doing these things to pout constantly and just woe is me, or are you seeing things on a checklist being checked off, and are you slowly working towards something and growing towards whatever it is you're trying to get to? And if so, that's post-traumatic growth. And like, I think that's kind of the best way I have found to communicate my thoughts around it.
I absolutely agree. I think we're both on the same side of the table here, with what we want to see, how we want to heal. I think it's just me. I think being literally a grammar stickler, because traumatic is an adjective. You know what I mean? So post means something that comes after something, right? And traumatic is describing something else. So post-traumatic stress is the thing. That's the cause. So it's after a traumatic stress, what? And I think that's the only thing. We dropped part of the definition and it doesn't make sense to me. In fact, if you use that same definition, post-traumatic growth is like after a traumatic growth incident, what? But I know what is meant by it. I just, by the way, I was I was in the very first iteration. I was in Warrior Path #1 at Boulder Crest. Yeah. And I totally agree. It's an excellent program. It's probably done nothing but improve since that. But I am not like a regular practitioner, but I would tell people that there were times of intense pain where the only thing that helped me wasn't drugs, wasn't like a morphine drip or anything like that. It was transcendental meditation. It was the only thing that mitigated my pain, and I learned it there with the Warrior Path program. So you're absolutely right. I mean, there are post-trauma growth options out there that we need more of our warriors to experience, and that also includes the athletics, like the Warrior Games, Invictus Games, and Big Country Conwell's. I forget what he's calling it, but it's absolutely incredible. I know we're running short on time, and I want to ask you about one other thing, and this is also very important, is what is a gray shirt?
Yeah, I am wearing a Team Rubicon polo right now. Um, so Team Rubicon is a humanitarian and disaster response organization that is founded back in 2010 during the Haiti earthquakes and everything with Jake Wood and some colleagues and peers. But yeah, Team Rubicon, if you're looking at getting involved and, a tornado, a flood, you're wanting to have an impact in something going on in the country or in your immediate community, they're a fantastic organization. And the volunteer base is the gray shirts. And you wear a gray shirt and it says Team Rubicon. I'm wearing a polo right now from them, but it's a fantastic way. You don't have to be a veteran. There's a lot of veterans that are in it. It's around 200,000 or so registered gray shirts around the country. But if you're looking for kind of the idea, or that feeling of continued service, wanting to be able to give back and plug into your more immediate community for those kinds of things, they're a fantastic organization to plug into. And so They've got plenty of training opportunities and a lot of stuff going on that I think is great. Another thing that's fantastic to look at, Team Rubicon's, that their bread and butter is, the idea of continued service and everything for disasters and humanitarian assistance and things is there. But there's also other programs. Sheepdog Impact Assistance is one that they do a warrior path as well, based out of Arkansas. There's someone to look at if you're kind of looking at wanting to do that post-traumatic growth. They're tied into Boulder Crest. They're one of the outlying sites, but they also have several programs with the idea of get off the couch. And so if you find yourself struggling, if you find yourself kind of in that rut and you're needing to kind of find an activity based kind of substance within the community of law enforcement, fire departments, and veterans. So first responders and veterans, active military, they can all kind of plug in there, and they have this like get off the couch initiative. They're who I actually climbed Kilimanjaro with. So they're another good resource specifically for that side of the coin as well. So, but yeah, Team Rubicon, I've been associated with them since 2019, and I've got a lot of love, a lot of appreciation, a lot of relationships there. Been very fortunate to be a part of a lot of major community impact throughout multiple hurricane seasons and wildfires, tornado outbreaks. It's a lot of fun. There's some really great people.
Team Rubicon did a lot of work during the COVID time as well, didn't they?
Yeah, Operation Kick the King. So yeah, there was they were doing anything from supporting high risk communities, and you think about like the Navajo people and stuff, and you think about these tribal lands that don't have a lot of healthcare infrastructure. They went in there with a bunch of gray shirts that were medically trained and provided, whether it be just backfilling medical personnel, whether it be food banks. We found ourselves running food banks all over the country. They didn't have people to hand out food because not all, but a large majority of the population in some of these food banks were high risk people at the time for COVID. And so they went in and made sure that communities were able to get food dispersed, medical logistics operations, all sorts of stuff. And it kind of ties back into that humanitarian pathway that Team Rubicon, really finds themselves identifying with, as well as international space as well. They've done a lot of international work, trying to alleviate any sort of humanitarian strain in some tough and difficult parts of the world, depending on the situations and as they come up.
Great. Join Team Rubicon. Go see the world right after something terrible happened.
Yeah, we had I thought my first time being really plugging in with them, 2019, the first big operation we were a part of was Hurricane Dorian, which, if you remember, in 2019, absolutely decimated the Bahamas. And I remember it was like my first week on with the team, and we had to get real creative in how do we get people, specifically like people with a healthcare background, into the Bahamas. And so we were, flying them to Dallas, get their med gear, fly them to Florida. They get on like, if I remember right, we had them get on like some small little boat. We found a guy that was like, hey, I'll take them out to this like island, the size of a house. And then from there, like a private seaplane or something will pick them up and get them to this far side of the island because the airport's gone. It's been completely decimated on the island. And like, we know that like pharmacies, clinics, homes have all been just absolutely destroyed. And so essentially the first boots on the ground were within like 24, 36 hours after the winds have died down, and these gray shirts essentially did this like beach incursion into the community, and like we're going and helping stand up these pharmacies and these clinics to kind of get healthcare and stuff plugged back in across the island. And as infrastructure stood up, we were sending more and more resources, and I just remember that essentially being my first week with the team, and I just remember being in awe about, you know, look what we can accomplish. Like we're repurposing and all the stuff we learned, or a lot of us had learned in the service, and now we're rebranding it. And it's no longer a military operation with destructive objectives, but like we have an objective to have a really positive impact in a community that's really hurting. And so it was really exciting to kind of first week kind of with that team and be inspired like that. I never forgot that.
Talk about living the adapt and overcome lifestyle. Well, speaking of flying in, it's about time we start landing this plane. Before getting into the final segment, last question is how's the health now? How's the cancer today?
I'm in a good headspace about it. We've got some tough decisions coming up. It's still there. It's not going anywhere. And I'm taking it bit by bit. We've had it has spread. It has created new challenges, but I try to just, like anything in life, you just like process it, figure out like what are your options, and you got to weigh those. And so we have some decisions coming up that we're going to have to make. But again, like I'm in a good headspace. I have a good support system. I have good benefit system to help alleviate any of those worries, and just taking it day by day, event by event.
All the best to you and your family, and hope those decisions aren't too difficult. But I appreciate it. So let's segue now into the final segment, the countdown to impact. This is 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person who have all made an impact in your life.
3 books. The Mission, the Men, and Me by Pete Blaber. I really enjoyed that. I really liked Nick Lavery's book. He was a Army Green Beret, high leg amputation from a green on blue incident. And his was really inspiring. I read that after I got sick, and like how he overcame. He's still on active duty today, and has done multiple deployments, and he's still a part of his ODA community. So I found that really inspiring. Third book, probably be the last couple I read. I wouldn't say were inspiring. They were just kind of history books. I liked Prince Harry's book. I thought that was the what he overcame. I actually got to meet him at Invictus. He was the founder of Invictus. So I read his book before I knew I was going to meet him. So I read his book beforehand, and like what he went through, going, deploying to Afghanistan and everything, but losing his mother in such a public fashion, and growing up in that light and stuff. I found that pretty inspiring to see what, and he still takes a lot of criticism and things, but like he's lived the life. He's 2 tours in Afghanistan and done all these things, and he's still trucking along, helping out the veteran community with like Invictus and stuff. I found that really inspiring. I would say that was another really good one.
That is my favorite poem.
Invictus.
Yep, that is my
Yeah,
favorite poem.
that's a good one.
Two quotes and one person.
Two quotes. Man, really put me on the spot. Two quotes.
Or, rules of thumb, since I
Um,
can never remember a quote myself.
I probably got some. I have like a document that I put like little things that I think of because I'm doing some writing of my own. I think I have some quotes on there that I wanted to come back and reference, but um, maybe not. Maybe it's on another document.
All right. We'll give you a pass. Brush twice before crossing the road.
Yeah, yeah. I can go the one person like you know my wife's an easy one to say. Like I was gone a lot. She was very supportive of the kids and everything, and kind of keeping our family dynamic moving. And I think that's an easy one. And then I'm very fortunate. I actually have two. Matt Downing is his name. He's a retired command master chief, but he he's the first person I called when I got sick both times. That wasn't family, and he still is. I talk to him quite regularly still. He's someone not family that has had a tremendous amount of impact in my life, both professionally and personally, and still today. I've known him my whole career. I've known him since I was a brand new corpsman, just by happenstance, and I've been able to cultivate that relationship into something really special.
Excellent. I'm glad you had somebody like that to speak with.
Yep.
Well, Steve.
Um, yeah.
Oh, so go ahead. Sorry.
The what? Other than that, crap, man. I'm trying to think of a quote. The wish I had.
That's all right. That's all right.
Oh, you know what? I got one. It's there's positivity to extract from the worst situations. There's positivity to extract from the worst situations, and that came from Nick Lavery, and that was one of the things that really stuck out, and it was one of the deals that he said. And like I said, he's got like a couple books and things now out, but he does a lot of public speaking, and I really enjoy listening to him and kind of talk about his mindset. And I really tried to apply a lot of that into my own stuff, ramping up to Kilimanjaro. And that quote very specifically stuck with me. So I guess I kind of switched them. I gave you two people in one quote, um, but that I think is very true, and I think I try to apply that even when the doctors give me some less than ideal news about my medical stuff. Like I don't necessarily have like a breakdown moment anymore. It's like, okay, that sucks. You got to acknowledge it and recognize, okay, it sucks. But all right, what did we learn? We learned this, and we learned that this isn't a problem. So cool, that's a win. This isn't a problem, so we can move that from the board. Now we're going to focus our energy only on this and not both of these things. Like I'm going to consider that a win, and kind of go from there.
Wasn't it you? I think it was that article uh, that was sent to me on you. Didn't it say a rock is just a rock until you pick it up and swing it like a hammer?
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah, yeah. I think I said that to Thomas. I think he's the one that wrote that. But yeah. we were talking about that, and I was like, it's just got to repurpose your stuff. And so like that's kind of what I've been trying to do with my cancer. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get any better just on its own or whatever. It's not. So I can sit and be mad or pout about it, or I can do something about it. And what can I do about it? Like, we can talk about it. We can have conversations. We can talk. Maybe having these kinds of conversations helps somebody that hears it that we don't even know they needed to hear this kind of stuff, and maybe it inspires them to find their Kilimanjaro. What's your Kilimanjaro? Doesn't have to literally be that mountain, right? But like, what's your thing? What's your thing that you need to overcome to like take control of your life? And I think it's relative, and I say that about so many things because I watched a Nigerian in Invictus Games with no legs, and I think he had one arm, jump in the pool and swim 100 meters. Well, like if I had one arm, that's pretty Kilimanjaro. That does not seem like an easy feat. Definitely not something I can wrap my head around and just say I'm just going to do this. Like you've really got to commit some mental energy to that, and like you're all in once you're in. And I watched him do it, and I'm like, so what's your Kilimanjaro? And maybe this having these conversations will inspire somebody to find what their thing is, and and conquer it, take it on.
It's actually very close to my friend Eric Weidenmayer is the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. This was, gosh, 25 years ago now. But yeah, he has an annual event out in Colorado. What's your Everest? Very, very similar. But yeah, it's the same thing. His organization motto is what's within you is stronger than what's in your way. So now, whatever you call that, that obstacle, that rock, right? That's what you do with it. Well, Steve, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. And this final question is maybe the easiest one. If people want to learn more, find out more about you, connect, maybe learn more about Team Rubicon, where do they go?
For me, I have a Facebook page where I put updates on my health and stuff, and I kind of put out what's going on. It's Steve's fight with MS and cancer. And then for Team Rubicon, you can just go to their website and you Google Team Rubicon. If you're interested in joining, it's simple, join now. It'll walk you through the process. I encourage, even if you're not a veteran, you just want to be a part of something special. Um, Sign up, get registered. You'll meet some pretty incredible people in your community, um, and they'll get you rolling. It's pretty exciting stuff.
It's a great mission, great organization, and also incredible story. So thanks once more for coming on and sharing it with us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.